information coming. Hopefully it's going to be informative. So, just wait one more minute.
No.
If anyone is not receiving my newsletter, there's a sign up over here. If you're already receiving it, don't worry about signing up. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out. It's short, to the point, easy to read. It's just my way of reporting back on, how I vote on things, why I voted that way, or things that I think you might be interested in. And there's also, my chief of staff is here tonight, Matt Hedges. There's also business cards on the table. So if you have something that you think you want to reach out to us about, don't hesitate to take Matt's card. Just kidding. Actually, I'm not kidding. Okay, it's 6 o'clock and I think we'll get started. First, I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. And I wanted to ask, is there anyone who has not ever been to one of my community meetings yet? So there's quite a few. So thank you for coming out. I hope you find it informative. I'm excited. This year will be the second year that we partner with the city council members with my meeting, and they come and help me because there's oftentimes questions about the city that I can't answer. And so this evening we have Mayor Sarah Aquino, who will be also speaking. I'm going to give just a quick 10-minute update, and I'm going to try and get through my information pretty quickly. And then we have Chief Rodriguez, who is going to give us a update on the emergency escape plan, and some things that are happening with the fire department, and safety things that they're working on for the community. And then Mayor Aquino will come up and speak, and then we'll have a Q&A for about, hopefully, 15 or 20 minutes. Any questions that you might have, you can shoot them at whichever of us you want to ask, and we'll be up here. Hopefully we can answer those questions. So at this time, I'd like to invite everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. And I think the flag is over here in the corner. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So this evening I'm going to just do a quick little brief update on homelessness, mobile crisis support teams, roads, our Inspector General, and Folsom Dam raise. The Folsom Dam raise is just a quick, I serve on 25 boards at the county, and they keep me busy with my studies, and one of the boards I serve on is SAFCA, which is the flood control agency. And so for those of you that were not aware, they are raising our Folsom Dam, and they're raising the Folsom Dam about 3.5 feet. And so between the summer of 2020, between now and the summer of 2020, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, around 10 or 11 of our dikes at Folsom Dam are going to be raised 3.5 feet. And then they'll also be doing some work on the gates, the dam gates. Once they raise all those dikes, and if for some reason we get a good rain and we want to retain some of that water, because every now and then we'll get rain, and but we'll have to let water out because of the salmon coming up the river or whatever. They will be working on some of the gates in the dam so that they can be actually closed, so that when they raise it that high, there's no water spilling out, basically. So I'm excited about that because that gives us more capacity for water storage, during times when we need it. So I also wanted to just quickly let you know our homelessness initiatives at the county continue. We have about hi guys. We have several initiatives that we're working on at the county. This year we continue to augment those and add to the work that we're doing at the county. One of the things that we're focused on is putting more resources toward mental illness, drug rehab, jail diversion programs. We have a probation pilot that is working with youth through our probation department, and they are basically the young people that are waiting for their sentencing can opt, if they qualify to be in that program, they can opt to go through this diversion program where they're under the supervision of probation. And it's just, I guess it's, we're trying to figure out how can we not have as many people in our jails, and are there some people who are awaiting sentencing that don't really need to sit in jail. The cost of having those inmates is around $175 to $200 a night. So for anyone that is not a danger to the community, it doesn't make sense if we can make sure they get back to their sentence, to their trial and everything. So I'm not going to talk at length about homelessness because there's quite a bit here. And we can, if you have questions about the homelessness, we can talk about it in the Q&A. And I also wanted to let you know that the sheriff department, this year the board voted to add some mobile crisis support teams, and I'm really excited. We had a half of a team in Citrus Heights and Folsom. The mobile crisis support team is a sheriff officer or a police officer plus a psychology. Hi, how are you folks? Come on in. A psychologist, and they work as partners, and they respond to domestic violence or calls that are sensitive in with someone who's mentally a little bit unstable. And they've had some great success with the mobile crisis support team. So we added a few, and our office advocated to have a full-time mobile crisis support team in Folsom and also in Citrus Heights. So we're really excited to be able to add that support. I also wanted to let you know right now there's some conversations going on at the county around another road tax, a Measure A road tax. And as I work on the Sacramento Transportation Authority Board. In the past several months, we've been having that conversation around should we put another measure on, and if we do put another tax measure on for the November ballot, what would it look like? What would the expenditure plan look like? And so that's the conversation that's going on now. We did some polling at the end of last year, and that polling was fairly decisive in that it showed it was an amazing poll. So over 1,600 people were polled, and it was a 2.5% margin of error. And it basically said that the top priority countywide, including the city of Sacramento, is fix the roads, fix the congestion, and make sure the money goes to something that we know it's going to go to. It can't be redirected to something else. And so there were other things that people thought were important, like making sure seniors get to where they're supposed to go, safe routes to school. People love the super shuttle, some of the new programs that RT is coming out with. So there were some, they liked air quality, but they didn't necessarily like the air quality programs that we have didn't score as high. But they like the idea of having clean air, which we all do. But at the end of the day, it was pretty clear in my mind after looking at the survey that if there was going to be a tax measure, it would need to be something that that responds to what the people want, and what the people want is roads repaired and congestion relief. And so that conversation is going on right now at the Sacramento Transportation Authority Board, and we'll be making a decision on the expenditure plan by mid-March. So I'll be giving you an update on that as that progresses. We do have a new Inspector General. I'm very excited to say Mark Evanson is our new Inspector General. He has come on board. He had a pile of work that had been collecting during the months that we didn't have an IG, and so he's worked his way through each case to do his follow-up. Mark is an experienced police executive with 32 years of law enforcement experience. And of those years, 20 were in the middle of senior management levels. He has 10 years as chief of police in Brentwood, which is supposed to be kind of a comparable, they say it's a comparable to the size of our region and the demographic and everything. And he's a leader, someone who's done a lot with complaint investigations, community police relations, and that kind of work. And I think one of the things, I met with him personally, one of the things that I kind of pointed out to him that was a priority for me is we definitely, I mean, we're so glad to have you here, first of all. It's good to have an Inspector General and have someone who's just kind of a new, fresh set of eyes on things, and to see if there's things we can do to improve our department or our processes. They may have some insight and ideas that will help us. So we're happy to have him on board and looking forward to working with him. I also wanted to, let's see, I think I went through that pretty quickly, and it's 10 minutes after 6, and I'm doing good. So before we go any further, I completely was remiss. And normally at the beginning of every meeting, I introduce anyone who's working on a board or a commission, a county board or commission, and I ask them to stand up, and I'm trying to remember who here might be serving on a board, county board or commission or city.
Historic District Commission.
Yep, stand up and introduce yourself. And
Hi, I'm Rosario Rodriguez, and I'm on the Historic District Commission.
thank you, Rosario.
And I'm Mark Moore, and I'm on the Utilities Commission.
And
I'm embarrassing that I'm not headed on the Parks Commission.
oh, that's right, I forgot. That's right. That's good. Okay,
I'm Ron Pugh. I'm the chairman of the Traffic Safety Committee for the city.
that's great. Anyone else? So these are really important leadership positions in the community. There's a lot of opportunity if you're someone who might be retired or just a super type A personality that needs to have a lot to do. If you're interested in a county board or a commission, we have county boards and commissions, and you can reach out, get Matt's card, email him and tell him I'm interested, and he'll send you a list of all the boards that have vacancies, and you can kind of say what you think might be interesting to you, and we'll get you on one of those boards and commission. There's an interview process that the chiefs of staff do, an interview process and make recommendations to the board. And I also normally during election season, I'm very happy to let those who are running for office say their name and the office that they're running for. I want to make it clear that this can't be a political meeting. This is a meeting that is for the community. It's a county meeting for the community, for you. And so this is not a place to give us a stump speech, but I'm happy to just make sure everyone knows who you are, so that afterwards, if anyone wants to ask questions, they can ask that person after the meeting. So if you're running for an office, if you want to stand up and introduce yourself, I know we have one person here who is running.
Hi, my name is Bridget Duffy, and I'm actually running for county supervisor. I'm running for Sue's spot. I'm here as a constituent. I have a bunch of questions I'd like to ask Sue as a constituent. At the last meeting, I wasn't allowed to ask the question, even one. So I'm hoping tonight that I will be able to ask some questions, because I've actually sat through this community meeting twice.
Bridget, your name
Twice
and
already.
what seat you're
So I
running for. I think
understand.
that's what we're looking for. This is not a speech time,
I'm not
and it's
trying
not
to
a
speak.
campaign.
You know, I do
just
want
wanted
to
you
do
to
a little
say your name.
education.
If you would
Excuse me.
please, just...
If you don't mind. I am going to do a little education. Sue is here in her official capacity as our representation. This is an official county meeting.
That's right.
I am here officially as a constituent. I'm in her district. The fact that I'm running, I appreciate that you let me introduce myself. That has nothing to do with why I'm here. I'm a constituent. I'd like to ask some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Okay.
So I think we have one more on it.
Oh, did we?
That's a tough act to follow.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Mark Moore, and as I said, I'm on the Utilities Commission, but I'm also running for Folsom City Council 2020.
What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Mark Moore.
Moore.
Okay.
I have cards I'd like to give to you folks if you want. If you have any questions or any comments after the meeting, I would love to stick around and answer questions. Just if you, and give you my card as well, so you can contact me later.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Rosario?
Hi, I'm Rosario Rodriguez, and I am also running for city council this November. So.
Anyone else that I didn't get? Okay, at this time I'm going to invite Chief Felipe Rodriguez to take the floor and take it away.
Okay. I only knew how to log into these difficult computers. It's like driving an automatic, very difficult. Good evening, everybody. Felipe Rodriguez, I'm your fire chief. Anybody not from Folsom here? From a different part of the county? Okay, well welcome. The information I'm going to cover today is pretty much specific to Folsom. However, some of it overlaps with other areas of the county. And the important part of this evening is just to cover a few minutes on how to get information in case of an emergency. Now, I know everybody in this room knows that when it's from you to us, you just dial 911, right? And that'll get us out to your home, likely within 6 minutes or so. But sometimes it's the opposite way, where we have to provide information to you. Well, how do we do that? Well, in the old days, we had a little yellow telephone that hung in the kitchen, and we used a little rotary. I had one of those. Nowadays, everyone has a cell phone, and unfortunately, we can't just reach out to the cell phones like that anymore. Presidential declaration, yes, the president can send out information. Amber alerts can come your way. There's other ways of communicating with you through your cell phone. However, if the fire department or the police department, whether in Folsom or anywhere in Sacramento County, wants to communicate with you, we need you to register your phone. So I'm going to show you how to do that in case if you haven't. For those of you who have, thank you very much. But if you haven't, there's no way for us to get that information to you because we don't know if you're here or if you're in some other state or maybe in Hawaii or something on vacation. But if you do register your phones, we can get you that information immediately within seconds so that you're aware of what's going on. So I'm just going to cover a couple items here on our website. If you go to any one of our city pages, down on the bottom right corner of any city page, there's a little button called Emergency Information. And when you click that button, any page will get you to our emergency information page. That's the page where you would go to register your phones, and it'll also tell you what's going on in the city. This one happens to be right now. All city of Folsom operations are normal, right? But if there was a wildfire, an earthquake, or a flood, or something major, we would put it right on here, the emergency information page for you. There's this one button here called Register for Emergency Alerts. When you click on that button, it'll get you right to Nixle, which is what we use here in Folsom. We also use Sacramento Alert. That's the one that will provide information anywhere in the county of Sacramento, Yolo, or Placer. El Dorado County has a completely separate system, but for those of you who don't live within the city limits, please register your phone. My recommendation is register your cell phones on both, because you never know if you're here within our town, or if you're somewhere else within our county, maybe running an errand downtown. Well, our Nixle program won't really report anything that's happening downtown Sacramento, but the Sacramento Alert will. So if you're in an area that's a dangerous area or where they need you to move or evacuate, they would send you a message through that program. All of the fire departments, police departments have access to this. The county of Sacramento can send a message out if there's a large-scale emergency that's affecting the entire county. So I would ask that you register for sure, and a couple other things to show you on this page. For those of you who want to know a little bit about anything that's going on, including pandemics, or anything on the right side here, all your main emergencies, disasters, if you click on it, I'll just pick one. Let's just pick wildfire, since that's a pretty prevalent one these days. It'll give you some basic information. on what to do to prepare now, to survive during, and to be safe after. So all of those on that side there that I was showing you will have that before, during, and after, so you can get some basic information on the right. In addition to that, the rest of this page will have all of our plans, our city emergency plan, evacuation plan, wildfire protection plan, our map for evacuations. Since evacuations is a big deal, especially after what happened in Paradise, we've all come together in our area. I've met with the fire chief for El Dorado Hills. I'm soon meeting with the fire chief for Placer, South Placer Fire, to talk about what do we do if we have a large-scale emergency or disaster in our city where we have to evacuate people out, or even more importantly, evacuate people in, and how do we handle that? So what we did is we broke apart our city into 36 different zones for the city of Folsom, so that we can do more of a bite-sized piece to really take control of that area within our city. Just about under 1 square mile per zone. Some of them are a little larger, some of them are a little bit less. But we can actually pick a zone and we line them up with our fire engine response districts. We have 5 districts, but we broke it all apart, and I know the division doesn't work perfectly, but it's close enough. All right? But it allows us to really separate these zones and align them to the main arterials of our city. So we want to use Bidwell. We want to use something like Iron Point, Broadstone, some of the larger streets that can handle more capacity. You'll see some of the darker lines there that surround. The goal is for all of our residents, if you have to ever evacuate, and you get that message to evacuate, to get to one of those arterials so you can get out of the area as fast as possible. So, since we have 36 of them, I'm going to have anybody in this room here just give me a number between 1 and 36. I'm going to click on it and show you what it looks like when you actually zoom in to your little area. And my recommendation is to know your area before an emergency happens. If you forget, it's okay, because the police and fire department utilize this map for all of our drills. In a real incident, we would go straight to the map and take control of that area and really cordon it off and prevent people from coming in and work together to get people out. So if I can get a number from any...
Lucky number 7.
Lucky number 7? All right. Well, what do you know? Let's see. What happens when we click on number 7? Which area is this? It looks like we have... Folsom City Hall, Police Department, Community Center. And you notice the little arrows right here. So it tells you to follow the arrows to get out of those areas. And then there's a little police car that lets us know, as the responders, where to place the police cars to prevent people from coming back in. All right, so that allows us to take a smaller piece and really take control of that whole area. And there might be a situation where we have to do 7 and 6. So then as police and fire, we can coordinate and say, okay, this is what we have to do. Furthermore, these areas are all lined out on a table in like a Word document style to know exactly what intersection to put the police cars in and then start moving people out. In addition to that, what you will find with some of these areas is when there are schools or anything larger, they'll be highlighted and it'll give you an opportunity to get to those locations. A very important question that will always come up is, well, where do we evacuate to? Well, here we go. Evacuation centers and shelters. It's right on our website. A lot of people don't know that we actually have these. Are you able to see that okay, or is it too small? No, it's okay? All right. So the Andy Moore Sports Complex, that's a city-owned building. It's large enough to hold 1,087 people during the day and 543 overnight. We have our 2 high schools. We have our 2 middle schools. We have Folsom Lake College and 3 churches. And the reason why we selected all of these is these are all approved by the American Red Cross. So worst case, if we have to use a different area, that would be last resort. These will be our primary evacuation centers and shelters. Centers during the day, shelters overnight. So that's what we have already organized, ready to go. All of the agreements are in place.
Do you already have the tents and everything?
And excuse me?
Do you already have the apparatus for
We
that?
would have to have the Red Cross meet us there with any supplies or anything else, but at least it gives us a facility with, restrooms and everything else that we would need to host people for a long period of time. So that's the plan that's in place. We actually have a full plan. I'm not going to go through the whole plan today, but just to take a quick look at it, this is the actual plan for us, and it's broken down to the different areas of the plan itself. Safety zones, locations to find safety if you needed to for your areas, and some different access control and all the other things that we have to do within the plan. The plan itself will also have, it's all laid out, same exact little shelters and centers, the map itself, and then it gets right into the actual maps. Once again, that's for the police and fire department to look over. It's also posted on the internet, fully transparent. Anybody's welcome to look at it and take a look. So, as I was given some examples earlier, we have a school right here, Carl Sundahl School. That's a little area there that people might be able to use as a safety zone if they needed to get out of their area but can't. Go to a school. And the reason why I ask you to get to a school, if you can't get out of your area, normally has a large parking lot, a big open space, pretty safe, and it lets us as first responders know, go check the schools first. Why? Because we want to make sure the kids are safe. But if there are people there in the parking lot, don't go inside, but stay in the parking lot. At least we'll know a central point within your area to check. So that's our priorities. Check the 12 different schools that we have to make sure everybody's safe. So that is our plan. I want to share that with you. The most important part of today is for you to register your phones so that you can get the information ahead of time. All right? So I will be available for questions at the end.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at this time, I am truly excited to welcome Mayor Sarah Aquino, who is going to give us an update on Folsom.
Sure. Thank you, Sue. Thank you for having me. I'll tell you, we don't just have the best fire chief in the county, we have the best fire chief in the country. So thank you, Chief. We're in good hands with you here. A couple things I wanted to go over. First of all, it's my pleasure to be serving as mayor this year. And the mayor has a very nice office at City Hall, if you haven't been there. So every Thursday from 2 to 5 p.m. I hold office hours at City Hall. If you come in the main entrance off of Natoma Street and go upstairs to the corner office, that's where I am. You don't need to have an appointment. You can just drop in. Sometimes there's nobody there, sometimes there's a line, but you can come on over, you can talk about anything, you can ask a question, pitch an idea, complain, just introduce yourself, whatever. So every Thursday from 2 to 5, on the very off chance that I'm not there, I will have it staffed by another council member or a member of our senior city staff. And of course, if you want to talk to me a dedicated time when nobody else will be there, maybe a little bit longer, then you're always welcome to call or email me, and I'm happy to schedule a time just for you. So we are, it's only February, but the city of Folsom likes to do things pretty early, so we are in budget mode right now. The city of Folsom has about a $92 million general fund. It's going to go up to about $94 million next year. Things are pretty much going to be status quo, which means that we don't have to cut any services or any programs. We'll be offering things just like we have been, but it goes up obviously a little bit every year because we have employee raises and we have benefits and PERS costs and all that kind of stuff. Minimum wage increases, all that sort of stuff. So City of Folsom's looking pretty good. We have a county or a council policy that we maintain a reserve of at least 15% of our general fund. We're actually about 18% right now, so we've got about $18 million in the bank to get us through the next recession. And of course, we try to spend your tax money very wisely, and so some of the priorities for us are reinvesting in our infrastructure and of course putting some of that money away for a rainy day, and then of course public safety is and always will be our #1 priority. So if you are interested, you're welcome to come to the council meetings. We meet on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month at 6:30 at City Hall, and you're always welcome to put in your 2 cents about our budget. Part of that, and part of what we try to do here, is just add to the programs and services that we provide to our residents. Last month, we were the first jurisdiction in the state of California to roll out a program called Vitals Aware Services. It is an app that is paired with a beacon that has a Bluetooth device in it. And this was created by a woman who was the police chief in Minneapolis. And if you have somebody in your family who has dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, maybe you have a child or a grandchild who is on the autism spectrum or something, maybe nonverbal, something like that, you can call our police department and talk to dispatch and get this little beacon from them, again, that has a Bluetooth device in it. And they can wear that on their wrist, and then you go online to the Vitals website and you create a profile for that loved one. And then that, our police and firefighters have this Vitals app on their phones. And so if they get within about 80 feet of somebody who is registered and has this beacon, they get a ping on the app on their phone, and so it tells them. So in a case of a crisis, let's say we have somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia, whatever, who wanders off. We can put out that alert, and that app provides some information about that person, some personal information. Maybe the person doesn't like loud noises, or they don't like bright lights, or something like that. So all of that sort of stuff can be included on the app. So we got 50 beacons from the Vitals company. The last I heard, we had only distributed 11, so we have plenty to give away. Again, you call the dispatch office. The app is $4.99 for you to have that service per month, but it seems very reasonable for that kind of peace of mind. So let's see, what else do I want to talk about? As Sue mentioned a little bit about the homeless situation, which obviously is the big topic these days. In the city of Folsom, we do have a navigator. The police department pays for her. Her job is to help connect homeless individuals with services. And that could be mental health services, substance abuse services, housing, all that sort of stuff. Currently, she's working with about 35 individuals. You know, we don't know exactly how many homeless people we have in Folsom. It's, you know, somewhere between 75 and 100, maybe 1% of our population, 1.5% of our population. So in addition to the navigator, thanks to Sacramento County, we do have this social worker / psychologist who is riding with a police officer. Currently, we have that person 10 hours a week in the city, but thanks to the grant that we're getting from the county, that's going to go up to 40 hours per week. And as the supervisor mentioned, that team of the police officer and the psychologist will be responding to any call that involves a mental health issue, okay? In addition to that, we do have Heart of Folsom, which is a nonprofit here in Folsom that is running a 12-week winter shelter that ends about March 7th. My husband and I have been volunteering at that shelter once a week and getting to know some of the individuals. They're allowed to have up to 20 guests per night. We have churches in the city who rotate. So maybe Lakeside will host these 20 homeless individuals for a week, and then they'll go to Oak Hills, and so they've been rotating. And so I've been getting to know some of these folks, and I will tell you there have been some success stories. I can think of 2 gentlemen off the top of my head who have been guests at the winter shelter this year. They are working, and they are on the road to sobriety. They are alcoholics, but they've been going to AA, and so there are some success stories. But there are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of people with substance abuse and mental health issues. And you know, there's one woman who comes to the shelter who has her phone up to her ear, like she's talking to people on the phone, but it's just her hand. She is severely mentally ill. And what do we do about some of those folks? I do not have the answer. Some of it is bigger than the city of Folsom. It's bigger than the county. It's really, we need some state help. But we are doing what we can. Obviously, you are aware of the constraints that we're under because of the court decision that does not allow us to cite someone for sleeping or staying on public land when we do not have a shelter bed available for them. And of course, we do not have a year-round shelter in the city of Folsom, so we cannot enforce that, that rule. But I will tell you, we still do enforce the law. And that means if you are trespassing on private property, we can cite you. If you are intoxicated in public, we will cite you. And if you look at our police logs, you will see that we are citing people for these things, right? So we're doing what we can in that area. Community Service Day, if you haven't participated in that before, we're going to have our 7th annual Community Service Day on Saturday, September 19th. It's a great day when we get about 3,000 volunteers, mostly Folsom residents, to come together to complete a bunch of projects in our city. Not only to help beautify the city, but to just do a lot of projects. And one of those projects is what's called Neighbors Helping Seniors. So if any of you, or maybe you have a relative or a neighbor who is a little bit older and maybe needs some help cleaning some gutters, trimming some bushes, you know, whatever. Last year I spent a couple hours shoveling rock from one neighbor's house to the other neighbor's house at their request. So those sorts of things are things that we can do at Community Service Day. So I can give you my business cards also, and you're welcome to contact me if you have an idea for Community Service Day. Also on Wednesday, March 25th at the Community Center from 5:30 to 7 p.m. is the brainstorming night where anybody can come and say, hey, I've got an idea for Community Service Day. So sometimes it's cleaning up parks or spreading mulch and bark at the schools, or again, helping repair, you know, doing repair work and stuff at a senior's house. If you're a Folsom resident, you know that your utility rates went up on February 1st. I can tell you that I didn't want to be a city council member who voted for a utility increase, but I did. I don't want to be a Folsom resident who pays more in utility rates, but I do. But I'm pretty sure all of you want to turn on your faucet and have clean water come out. You want your trash picked up every week. And when you flush your toilet, you want the waste to go to Elk Grove, which is where it goes. So we did have to raise the rates. We do that knowing that people live on fixed incomes. But I'll kind of break this down. We have 3 different funds, those 3 utilities I mentioned, water, wastewater, and solid waste. Those each have their own fund separate from the general fund. Those 3 funds do not subsidize each other. They do not subsidize the general fund, and the general fund does not subsidize those things. So, for example, with your solid waste, your trash, your recycling, your green waste, we had not raised solid waste rates in 15 years. So, we had to. We have, the state law requires that we do a rate study to help us figure out how much those services cost us to provide. And once we figure out that, the size of the pie, we have to figure out which part's commercial and which part's residential. And we have to make sure those customers are paying their fair share. And then we have to set the rates accordingly. And in the city of Folsom, in our solid waste and in our wastewater utility or funds, we do not have any debt. So we try to pay as you go, which is of course better for you, the taxpayer, in the long run. So for example, with our garbage trucks, those things are starting and stopping every 50 feet, right? I mean, those trucks do not last forever. They have to be replaced. And so we are not borrowing money when we replace those trucks. We're paying cash. And so all of those things have to get added into the cost of the rate, just like the driver's salary and benefits and PERS and all that kind of stuff. So probably the most frequent criticism that I heard during that process was, look, we understand that you have to raise rates, but it's not really our problem that you didn't raise rates at all for 15 years and now you want to raise it, right? And I think that's a valid argument, but you need to understand something. The state law does not allow us to just put kind of like a mechanism in there to increase the rate gradually, regularly. So for example, if you own a restaurant and you set the prices on your menu, you just kind of figure that your prices are going to go up every year, your expenses are going to go up every year because of the minimum wage and the price of food, whatever. And so you just kind of build in this escalator. We're not allowed to do that. We have to do these rate studies, and we can only set rates for 5 years at a time maximum. And the previous city council did not want to raise your rates during a recession or coming out of a recession. So unfortunately, we had to do it. But just know that we pay those rates also. So I'm going to stop right now, but I will join Sue in answering any questions that you have.
Can I just ask you a question about the garbage?
Sure.
Because I've heard about this rate hike. The garbage currently, like our recycling, I'm sure you know about this. Our recycling currently, like I put my plastic in my recycling bin and then it gets shipped, I think 2 hours. And the only reason why I know this is because my nephew's a garbage man. I think it gets shipped out to Nevada, and then it gets shipped back to the coast, and then it gets shipped across the sea to China. And then China doesn't want it anymore, so they're sending it to Malaysia. This is correct, right? So under these circumstances where all this carbon pollution is being created around plastic garbage, which is later in Malaysia because they're not prepared for it, winding up in the ocean, as long as I don't mind having a rate hike, but as long as we're doing it, I mean, could we examine how we're handling our garbage?
So let me say this. So state law requires that we divert at least 50% of our solid waste from the landfill, okay? And the city of Folsom, recycling used to be a moneymaker for us, right? We used to make money by turning in all those recyclables. Now it costs us. And that swing is over $1 million, which of course impacts your rates and my rates. So we still have all these mandates from the state that we're required to comply with, even when there is not a vendor who wants to process all those recyclables. And folks, it's going to get worse. The state of California right now, pretty soon, it's already happening commercially, but it's going to start happening residentially. They don't want you to put your banana peel in your garbage can anymore. They want you to put it in your green waste, and we're gonna have to do organic recycling. That is mandated by the state of California. They want us, the city of Folsom, to fine you if you put your banana peel in your garbage can instead of your green waste. It's absolutely ludicrous, but we have to follow these rules. I prefer to tell the state of California where they can stick that banana peel, but, you know, as a steward of your taxpayer dollars, I have to, you know, do things correctly. So, anyway, that happens not just in recycling, but in a lot of things where the state of California gets more and more heavy-handed, and we, the cities and counties, are gonna have to get more and more creative.
Yeah, I can say that at the county, there were some of our recycling companies actually were going out of business because they were paying to get rid of garbage. They could, because China cut us off.
Right.
And we have some companies that went out, one company in South Sacramento that, down by Galt, that invested millions of dollars on a new machine that has almost perfect recycling. And it's coming up with clean garbage that they can send, but China still isn't accepting it. So they're sending it to India, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Mexico. The challenge is that the market is moving. They're not able to always get rid of the garbage, and they're not always able to get rid of it at the price that they have these long-term contracts with the county. And so now we're having those conversations around, can the county be more flexible in what we can pay for this garbage? And it's a real challenge because it's a moving market right now. And so it's an ongoing issue.
So,
Yes.
maybe it's more complex than a sentence answer, but the blue barrel, the green barrel, the gray barrel, etc., they all go down to Elk Grove?
No, I'm talking wastewater goes to Elk Grove. No, those things go to the landfill.
Where? In Reno or wherever she said?
The trash and stuff goes to the Kiefer landfill
Which is?
in Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So-
It's just the recyclables. We're talking about plastic, you
So
know.
recyclable goes down to Kiefer?
It probably
have
goes there
several
temporarily.
Well, you have your own garbage
Yeah.
in Folsom.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
take it to the county landfill.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
to the landfill,
okay.
Yeah.
And where does the green stuff go?
They have, I believe that also goes to Kiefer. They have an area for green waste. Yeah,
Just curious.
yeah.
But the new regulations, the way they are changing, it's going to require organic recycling.
Right, you said.
And when they require organic recycling, then we have to decide, are we going to put the organics in with the green waste? And if we do that, we can no longer just dump it in the landfill. We're going to have to find a way to build a facility that can process it, because there's methane gas that comes off of that, or those organics. And so that will be, the biggest challenge will be the cost of the, can we even manage that financially, or can we do it air quality wise in the valley here? And what are we going to do while we're making arrangements to figure out how we're going to process the organics, and then the education process to the general public. And the state is basically making us the organic recycling, the food police. They are wanting us to set up the law has it written in it that we have to set up a fine system. So there is an administrative cost around that. So that is going to impact the cost of your sewer and garbage also. And I can't even imagine, what about the ants, and what about the smell, and
Yeah.
how do we deal with
That's one of the things
that,
we'll have to figure
you know?
out. Are we gonna now start picking up your green waste every week instead of every 2 weeks? Because who wants to have,
Yeah.
rotting stuff in the back?
That's a great topic. We were just with some family members in the Bay Area, and they have their green waste and compost all together, and every week it goes out. And I think that's wonderful if we can do it. I have no idea
Yeah.
what the...
I think that's the conversation that we're having at the Solid Waste Authority. We're also having conversations with other jurisdictions to see if there's a way we can partner with a facility that we can all share the administrative cost of. That we're working on it as we speak.
You know, another, don't want to overdo this, but I think most people want to do it correctly, and most of us don't know for sure. So, you know, we get the little flyer every year, but still, there's lots of questions. Does this stuff go?
Yeah. And generally speaking, Folsom has a very clean stream of trash and recycling. You know, people, for the most part, do it pretty well. But I'm not sure, I'll have to look. There might be a video on the city website about, you know, yeah, like you don't put your greasy pizza box in the recycling, right? So, yeah.
I just wanted to ask, how about localizing our compost? Like, as long as we're putting a lot of money into, you know, shipping it and all this other stuff and laws and this and that, why not do an educational program where neighborhoods can have localized compost bins, something like that?
I actually suggested that at the Solid Waste Authority, and they said there was a problem with the methane. It's an air quality issue. So they want an enclosed, there has to be a certain enclosed facility that processes it so that the methane gas doesn't escape. They said it was, and they can't make sure it happens. It was an air quality, and how do we track that they're actually doing it right? My idea didn't, I thought that was a good idea too, and my idea didn't fly. Because we could, yeah, we thought of the same on something, Bridget. What do you think?
That's
a good thing. Yes.
I just read that there's a coronavirus patient, the first one in Northern California where they don't know how this person got it. That was in Solano County, but they're being treated in Sacramento, which brings up, what, is Folsom doing anything? Is the county doing anything to prepare for this? Or are they waiting for the state?
We received a report on the coronavirus. In fact, I've had some people asking if I could write about this. We are told that it is not the big panic that everyone, you know, thinks it is, that it is under control. The coronavirus is actually a very common virus. This is just a certain strain of the same type of virus that's really tough. And so our county public health officials are on top of it. We're watching it very closely. We're getting regular reports on it. And so our team of doctors doesn't appear to be concerned at this point in time. We're managing it very well in the United States with quarantining people and so forth. But I'm sure, I mean, it's a concern for all of us, but we are watching it, and we will be reporting. I'll be reporting back, about, you know, updates that I get on either through my articles or through Facebook and through our meetings.
And the city of Folsom, I mean, we receive updates from the county, but Chief, you may have something to add just in terms of your paramedics.
Immediately we started receiving the reports as they were coming in, even before they hit the United States. And all of our personnel had to change the way they do business a little bit stricter when it came to any patient that had flu-like symptoms, as far as how they dress and how they treat that person. So that went into effect, came in from the county immediately. We've been doing that for the last few weeks. Earlier when I was showing those different, on the right side, all the different disasters and large emergency preparedness, the pandemic is on there. And I'm serious about that. When you look at it, it tells you the basic items. Wash your hands before you do things, and try not to cough in front of someone, things like that. And we should all practice that regardless, no matter what, because we want to make sure it stays under control and it doesn't become widespread here in the United States. You hear all kinds of reports, but we can start with each of us here in our city and make sure that we're doing things in a safe manner. I would say to definitely review that information, even if it's not a pandemic at this point here in the United States. It's still a good practice, no matter what, to just deal with daily actions that we're around other people in a respectful way to try to keep everything under control. If anything starts to change, definitely you will hear more information immediately. We'll be posting other information to the city. Yes.
I had a question, the communication issue. It's extremely important during an emergency for communication to be, because we're all on cell phones, correct?
there's a
Because
lot of
there's
people on cell phones.
like cell phones are pretty much the thing you need if you're going to stay in contact. The homeless population, I was talking to a man yesterday, and one of the things is that they often have no, because they don't have electricity, they are often cut off from their family or from, alerts, that sort of thing. And, well, it just brings me into my question about how the county is dealing with homelessness now. It seems like we're only interested in policing it, further criminalizing it, when there are models of cities that are taking public lands, taking old abandoned buildings, and actually creating permanent housing for people. And do you guys know about this model and that it is working? And why is the county not, pursuing that more? I know that you know about
Are you
the city of
asking me
Hope.
or them?
Well, the city of Folsom, also the police, because they have a huge part in this as policing the homeless. But homelessness in and of itself is not necessarily a crime. So what I'm saying is, as the police, as our supervisor, and as a mayor or, charge of the city, wouldn't it make more sense to protect the public? Public safety is at risk right now because of diseases. Wouldn't it make more sense to protect the public by housing the homeless? Wouldn't that eliminate some of the health hazards, some of the safety hazards, some of the mental illness issues, because it's exasperated by homelessness?
I think I can probably speak for the county, and I think this kind of goes to a question that you were trying to ask yesterday, or the other day. The county is working on the homeless issue at so many multiple levels. In our sheriff department, we have the Sheriff Hot Team, and they're out forming relationships with homeless people, and they use this phone app that TerraGo or something like that has a 15-point survey question that asks their name and are they a veteran, lets them do a criminal background check so they know if they're a criminal. GPS locates them. Every time they touch them, GPS locates them so they know their movements, they know the hot spots, and they can wrap services around that area into those areas that have a lot of homeless people. We did, a couple of years ago when we did our first homeless initiatives, we voted for a 75-bed facility, homeless shelter. We were not able to site that shelter every time we found a place that we thought was suitable. It was either too close to a school or too close to juvenile hall, or the neighborhood didn't want it. So our solution to that was to do what we call a scattered shelter model. The staff said, we can't get this sited and we're supposed to get 75 beds within 12 months. And so what they suggested, let's go after residential properties where we can have less than 6 people in a house. We can wrap services around each of those houses. And we went with the scattered site model. And within the first year, we had 14 of those up and running. With 5 people, or 5 or 6 people in each one. The magic of the 5 or 6 is if it's under 6 or under, you don't have to get a special permit unless you're treating drug detox or something like that. There have been conversations and questions around the different models, like a City of Hope type model. Those conversations are happening around the city of Sacramento and within our region. I can tell you that we have converted old dilapidated motels like the Courtyard Inn in North Highlands, where we converted an old motel that was just crime and homeless people. And what happened, we brought a affordable housing developer in and used Mental Health Services Act funds to actually subsidize that project so that they could come in and convert that motel to units for low-cost, mentally ill, low-cost. We have someone on site 24/7 for 20 years. We have to agree to do that for every one of those projects. So that model has been highly successful, especially in some of these motel areas where it used to be Prostitute Row down there in that area. They're trying to clean up some of those areas, and that's working well. We've had people ask about the Boys Ranch. Boys Ranch is used to be a juvenile facility. The county closed it down several years ago, I think during the downturn. When they mothballed it, basically that closed it. And we have a loan on that property, and our overhead on that property is substantial. It's around $450,000 a year. But in order to open it, it would cost us millions to bring it up to code, the current ADA and the code, and there are water issues out there, not enough water. And it's remote, and I don't know if the community would want a homeless City of Hope type thing out that far, and I'm not sure we would want it or it would work because it's so far away from all the services downtown. We really need something that's closer, that we don't have to drive so far to the services. It needs to be something that can be remote but close to services. And then the big elephant in the room that everyone has to talk about is the money. The City of Hope model, we sent people from the county. There were a couple supervisors that went and looked at it. It's it appears to be wonderfully successful, but there was a private benefactor who put millions and millions of dollars into that model. We do not have that. We do not have that benefactor, and we definitely don't have the money.
There is a $2.5 billion grant being given by the state of California to cities that want to deal with this. Isn't this true? There's a $2.5 billion, and right now, doesn't Sacramento County spends $50 million a year? Isn't that true?
We spend over $50 million a year on homelessness.
Why not use some of that money to rehabilitate these buildings?
I'm not sure what grant money you're talking about. Most grants have very specific requirements.
Okay, forget that. But what about the $50 million? Why wouldn't you use the $50 million to renovate?
The $50 million is working on multiple other things,
Like
so you can't just move things that fast. Let's move on to the next person. Let someone else have a chance.
Well, it turns out our governor lives in Fair Oaks. You probably know that.
But I heard.
Yeah, he doesn't live so far from my daughter. But, so I kind of know about this. And one of his #1 causes is finding housing for homeless, and he's been really proactive. I don't know all the things that's happened, but I'm certain some things have happened as far as housing. You might want to look at that. I even saw something on the Sunrise Mall, which I didn't really want that to happen with that. And I went to a meeting over there. They're redoing the Sunrise Mall. And I actually somewhere credible saw a plan for the homeless. I thought, not there where my, But
well, I can
there's
tell
lots
you
of things in the works, I do believe.
Yeah, we do have a homeless commission. It is something that I didn't support at first because the suggestion of having a homeless conversation in the region, I wanted to make sure everybody in the region was at the table, and not everyone was at the table when they first suggested it, but they came back and to have that conversation with all the jurisdictions. Folsom has appointed, I don't know who, but Roger Gaylord is but every city and the county, they're having these conversations, these regional conversations. The challenge we have is that, like Folsom, when she says, I think we probably have 60 or 70 or 100 homeless, it's like
1% of our population.
Sacramento City has thousands of homeless, and most of our homeless people, frankly, are down by the river or in the city where all the services are. And so there's a different way that a jurisdiction that has, a smaller problem, how they are going to financially look at that problem, or what they're going to want to accept in their city. They are thinking about you citizens. So, that's why I thought it was important that every jurisdiction be at the table. I don't know how you feel about it.
This gentleman back here has a question.
Yeah, on the homeless issue, in one of your last meetings, it came up a lot because it's a crisis right now. And I kept hearing mental illness, mental illness, mental illness. And as I looked into it and looked at various reports in LA Times and whatnot, in 2019 there were over 21,000 new people became homeless in our state. And the studies are showing that it's not quite what it used to be. It's not that all of a sudden 21,000 people became mentally ill and decided to live down by the river. The studies are showing now that what's happening is either financial hardships or especially these massive rent increases. And so there was a law passed which went into effect this January to do some rent controls. And then last year, the landlords, at least the greedy ones, their response was massive rent increases before they got locked down. And in response to this, cities all across the state had meetings to try and put moratoriums on no-fault evictions to try and keep people in their homes. And when this came to Sacramento County last November, you voted against it. And I'm just wondering, we're busy talking about, oh, the mentally ill, but really, it's people who have jobs who are just making it, and they're getting put out because of greed. And I'm just wondering, do you regret that decision? And also, would you continue to vote in favor of landlords' finances versus keeping people in their homes?
Well, I can tell you I do not regret that vote. I felt very strongly about the vote, and I, in my mind, feel like I'm sticking up for the little guy. And I can explain that. First, I'd like to say that regarding rent control, I've done a lot of studying. Worldwide, there isn't one economist that says that rent control works. What happens with rent control is that when you put a cap, basically when someone invests in a home, let me start with this. In the county we have 1.5 million people. About 44% of them are live in tenant living situations. And so for every one of those rental situations, you have to have someone who is willing to go out and save their money for a down payment, buy a property, and put it up for rent for someone else to live in. And that's a business. Whether it's just one person who has a rental property or someone who has apartment buildings, they're doing that to make money, or it's part of their business plan, retirement plan. And so in that scenario, they will buy a property and they will evaluate how much rent can I get on this property, how much can I pay for the property and still make a profit on the rent and still have enough money left over to invest back in that property to fix it up, fix the roof every 20 years or the pipes when they break or whatever. And if it gets to a point where they can't make enough money, then they will either not do as much, they'll try to, and there are some landlords, I was one of those landlords who had a business model with my rental properties where I would rent a little bit below the market. I would try and find someone who had really good credit. I knew they were going to pay on time and take good care of my property, but I didn't charge them as much. I made it so they were enticed to stay because they got a good rent and they got rewarded for being a good renter. When you start to put a cap on what someone can make on rentals, what ends up happening is the person that's already in that property, they get the benefit of, the rent's maybe not going up as much, but they're not motivated to leave that property, number one. The person who owns the property, if they're not making enough, they're not motivated to put back in to the property. And when that person does finally leave that property, they have to put a lot more in to fix it up and get it ready for the next person, and the next person pays more. They pay way more. So it's rent control doesn't work the way people think it works. It doesn't work. There isn't one economist who says it works, and I don't support rent control.
I understand it's a business.
So let me just finish answering your question. I'll try and do it quickly because it's 7 o'clock and this is probably going to be the last question and then we'll stay afterwards. But The emergency ordinance to put a moratorium on no-fault evictions. First, I want to explain what a no-fault eviction is. A no-fault eviction is where a landlord has rented out the property, say on a one-year lease. The person paid on time, they're not at fault, the landlord is not at fault, nobody's at fault, there's no fault. But they finished their lease. And at the end of their lease, putting a moratorium on no-fault evictions means you're telling the property owner they can't decide to use their property in a different way. And if they do decide, it puts rules on, you have to pay $5,000 to relocate them, you have to pay to get them out of your property. So what that does is that creates a situation where people who are wanting to invest might be a little bit leery to move someone into a property that they're not sure if they can, that they still have property rights, that they can control what happens in their property. There are, the no-fault eviction issue is the situation that happened at the Board of Supervisors. People are claiming that there was all these people. In my office, I did not get one call from anyone who was being evicted. I know this was in Susan Peters' district. It was in District 3. Susan was working really hard behind the scenes with the California Apartment Association and with county staff and SHRA to make sure everybody who received who had received an eviction notice had a place to go. A lot of the people who were, involved in this situation were people, there were actually property owners who had given cash for keys. They had already paid people to, we'll pay you $4,000 or $5,000 if we just bought this complex. We want to fix it up. We'll pay you if you'll move out to another unit on the other side, and we will fix it up, and then if you want to move back, it'll be at a little higher rent, or we can find you another apartment, but we'll pay you to relocate. They paid them $4,000 or $5,000 plus their security deposit, and then, putting a, retroactive moratorium on no-fault evictions could have harmed situations where people had already been paid to relocate and were happy and had relocated back into their unit and were really happy. And it would have could have required that those owners roll back the rents to the prior rent before they fixed it up. It was not fair. And if you look at the entire picture around rent control, this whole rent control thing, rent control now, what's going to happen with this rent control is that it says you can't raise the rent more than 5% every year or whatever.
Horrible.
Now it will make sure that they raise the rent 5%. That owners will raise the rent 5%. In fact, if you look at the statistics, if you go and look it up, I think I read an article the other day that said rents have gone up in Sacramento in the last year. Rent control in California in the last year, rents have gone up. So we're already seeing the results. The results of rent control means people are afraid they can't catch up if they don't keep up. And so they're going to put the rents up.
This is a total lie. I'm sorry. I'm going to take one more question, and then we're going to wait. We'll be here afterwards.
So with the homeless thing, one of the things we started off with was that California has 25% of the nation's homeless. And it seems to me that that's a big part of the problem that we don't talk about it and don't seem to have a way to address, because it's very unfair for the rest of the nation's indigent, homeless, and whatever, to be dumped on us, and us have to carry that burden. And it seems to me there ought to be a way to relocate these persons back to their birth city or where they originally came from in some way, and that community should be supported.
You almost have to prove it. I was at a coffee with a cop this morning, and the cops were telling me that they're more and more seeing people ride in on the rails, like the hobos rode in on the rails. People are coming from other states, and you have to prove it, number one. I think we do have the best weather. We have rivers here. So by virtue of our, we're like Hawaii. They have a huge homeless problem.
I can remember being in New York City one winter and seeing the homeless go to all the bathrooms and put the towels down their pants for the night.
Yeah.
It's a horrible place to be homeless in the world.
That's
why we're here, but
we are serious
some of this
about
is
it.
not our problem, and we shouldn't be forced to have this burden. And if we can ID them, we should be able to find out where they're from.
Well, we can't tell people where to go, and that's the Ninth Circuit Court decision that the mayor was talking about. Unless they're breaking the law or destroying the levees or creating a public health or safety issue, there's not much we can do except try to deal with it. And we are definitely, it's a problem. It's bigger in California than the rest of the nation, but we're not alone. It's a national problem.
It sounds to me like the law is incorrect.
There are some, that's a whole nother hour, which I won't go into, but there are some policies over decades that have unintended consequences that have kind of, in different areas, potentiated the problem, but I won't go into it because out of respect for your time. But we'll stay here as long as you want us to. Thank you all for coming and for participating in the meeting.
Thank you. So if anybody wants to